There are dangers in this world that we cannot see, poisons that hide in darkness, threats that cling to us without our knowing. This is the story of one family who learned this truth the hardest way possible. Chidi was a taxi driver, a good man who worked hard for his family. On this particular night, exhausted from a long day, he parked his car and walked the dark path to his home. His foot stepped on something soft in the darkness. He paused, looked down, but in the poor light he could see nothing. Just mud, he thought. He wiped his shoe on the grass and continued home. Tired and thinking only of rest, Chidi entered his home. His wife Ngozi was asleep on the couch, exhausted from her nursing shift. His two children, 9-year-old Adaze and 14-year-old Emeka, were sleeping peacefully. His elderly mother rested in her room. Without removing his shoes, Chidi walked through the house, across the living room, into the kitchen for water, checking on his sleeping children. Finally, in his bedroom, he removed his shoes and placed them near the bed. He had no idea he had just brought death into his home. Morning came as it always did. Little Adaze woke up early and went to the living room to play with her dolls. She sat on the floor, right where her father had walked the night before. His elderly mother swept the same floor with her traditional broom. The family moved through their morning. Breakfast, getting ready, the usual chaos of a busy household. No one knew that invisible poison was already touching their skin. It started small. At school that morning, Adaze suddenly felt dizzy. Her teacher noticed the child looked pale, feverish. By midday, she was vomiting. Ngozi rushed to pick her up, concerned but thinking it was just a normal childhood illness. Perhaps something she ate at school. But by evening, the fever was raging. Adaze was sweating, her small body shaking. Something was very wrong, but Adaze wasn't alone. That same evening, Grandmother Neka suddenly developed a severe rash on her arms and legs. She struggled to breathe. She had swept the contaminated floor that morning. Her hands had touched the broom that touched the poison. Then Emeka came home from football practice feeling nauseous with a severe headache. 3 family members, all sick within 12 hours. Ngozi, with all her nursing experience, was panicking. This made no sense. They had eaten the same food. What could cause 3 people to fall ill so suddenly? Dr. Okafor arrived and examined all 3 patients. The symptoms were baffling: fever, vomiting, rash, breathing problems, dizziness, and rapid heartbeat. Some symptoms suggested poisoning, but from what? He checked their food, their water supply, and asked about gas leaks. Everything seemed normal. This is toxic exposure, the doctor said gravely. But I cannot identify the source. The symptoms appeared too quickly for an infection. This is poisoning. I need to run blood tests immediately. Adaze, especially children, are more vulnerable to toxins. Their small bodies absorb more. But what toxin? That was the question no one could answer. Through the night, the situation became critical. Adaze's fever spiked dangerously high. Her small body began having mild convulsions. The hospital was being prepared. Grandmother Neka's breathing grew worse. Emeka couldn't stop vomiting. The blood work came back. Dr. Okafor's voice was tense on the phone. The test showed neurotoxin exposure. Neurotoxins, like from pesticides, certain plants, or venom. That word, venom, struck Ngozi like lightning. She began thinking frantically. Who got sick? Adaze, who played on the living room floor. Grandmother, who swept that floor. Emeka, who walked through barefoot. She herself hadn't gotten sick. Why? What was different about her? Then it hit her. The living room floor. They had all touched it, but Chidi hadn't gotten sick either. Chidi. Where had he been last night? She found him holding their dying daughter. Where were you last night before you came home? She asked urgently. He looked confused. I was working, then I walked home from the car. Why? Did you step on anything? Anything at all? Chidi's eyes widened as he remembered. Yes, something in the dark. I couldn't see what it was. I wiped my shoe and came inside. Ngozi's blood ran cold. Your shoes. You came inside with your shoes. Where are your shoes from last night? They rushed to the bedroom. There sat Chidi's work shoes from the night before. Ngozi, thinking like the nurse she was, put on gloves. She examined the shoes with a flashlight. The bottom of the right shoe had dark stains. Strange residue. An odd, slightly putrid smell. We need to go back, she said. Show me exactly where you stepped. Now. In the darkness, armed with flashlights, they retraced Chidi's steps from the previous night. Their neighbor, Mama Blessing, saw them searching and came out to help. They followed the exact path until they reached the spot. And there, in the beam of the flashlight, they saw it. A large snake, dead, its head completely crushed. Dried blood, lying in the grass by the path where Chidi had walked. The horror of understanding washed over them. Chidi had stepped directly on the snake's crushed head. The venom had transferred to his shoe, and he had walked that shoe through his entire house. They raced back with the shoe sealed in a plastic bag. Dr. Okafor examined it and identified the snake species from the venom residue. Carpet viper, one of the deadliest snakes in Africa. He made urgent calls to the hospital for specific anti-venom. Adaze was rushed to intensive care. IV lines, oxygen mask, monitors beeping frantically. The venom affects blood clotting, causes internal bleeding, attacks the nervous system. Little Adaze had sat for hours where the venom was, absorbed through her skin, the most exposure of anyone. Grandmother Neka and Emeka were also treated. Their conditions serious but less critical. In the hospital waiting room, Chidi collapsed. His daughter was fighting for her life because of something he had done, something he couldn't even see. For 3 days and nights, the family's life hung in the balance, especially little Adaeze, who had spent hours playing in the poison her father unknowingly brought home. The parents took turns at her bedside, watching the monitors, praying. Grandmother Neka slowly improved, the rash fading. Emeka recovered faster. He had the least exposure, but Adaeze, every hour was a battle. Chidi barely left the hospital. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. All he could see was his daughter's small body, fighting against the poison he had carried to her. Then, on the 4th morning, as dawn broke through the hospital window, her eyes fluttered open. When the family finally came home 2 weeks later, they returned to a different house, or rather, they had become different people. Neighbors led by Mama Blessing had deep cleaned everything. 3 times, every surface those shoes had touched. A wooden bench now sat at the entrance, a basin of water beside it, a shoe rack outside, not inside. Chidi stopped at the threshold. He removed his shoes slowly, carefully, washed his feet in the basin. His family watched this new ritual, this simple act that could have saved them so much pain if only he had done it before. Inside, the floors gleamed clean. Adaeze, still weak, smiled seeing the new setup. "No more outside shoes inside, Daddy?" she asked softly. "Never again," Chidi whispered. "Never, ever again." Chidi could not keep silent. The lesson had been too painful, the cost too high. At the taxi park where he worked, he gathered his fellow drivers and told them everything. Some laughed, some were skeptical. "You're being paranoid, brother," they said. But some listened, especially those with young children at home. One driver remembered his son's unexplained illness months ago. He worked at a chemical factory and often walked through spills. Another remembered stepping on something dead once, thinking nothing of it. "We don't know what we step on," Chidi told them, his voice heavy with experience. Oil spills, chemical waste, dead animals carrying disease, sick people spit on the pavement. It's all invisible to us until it's too late. I stepped on a snake in the dark. I brought its venom home. My daughter almost died. Almost died from something I couldn't even see. The story spread through the community like wildfire. At the market, Mama Blessing told other women. At the hospital, Ngozi shared it with fellow nurses. Teachers discussed it at the school. The response was mixed. Some families immediately started removing shoes at their doorways. Shoe racks appeared outside compounds. Basins of water became common sights, but others dismissed it. Too much trouble, unnecessary, old-fashioned, until another family fell ill. A child who played on floors where parents had walked after visiting the dump site. Then another case, then another. Slowly, minds began to change. Prevention, people realized, was indeed better than cure. 6 months later, Adaze was fully recovered. Her laughter filled the compound again as she played with friends. The shoe bench at the entrance had become second nature. Everyone who visited knew the rule. Chidi came home each evening and automatically removed his shoes, washed his feet. It was as natural as breathing now. His mother swept floors she knew were safe. Emeka taught the practice to friends who visited. The family gathered for dinner, all healthy, all together. The crisis had changed them forever, but they had survived, and they had learned. Every day we walk through a world filled with invisible dangers. Chidi stepped on a dead snake in the darkness. He couldn't see it, couldn't know the venom clinging to his shoe.